Hi, you're welcome to my channel. I am Dr. Princess and I'm so excited to have you, on this edition of Sexuality Corner with Dr. Princess. Welcome once again. In this video, I'll be telling a bit of my story. And the essence of that is for us to pick out some of the nitty-gritty of the things that happen, to a child during abuse period and after what's in their life. I hope you learned a lesson or two, and it lies it with your children to prevent. Yes, as we know, or for those who are just joining me for the first time, I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and also of various other forms of sexual violence in my growing up after experiencing the different abuses, gang rape as a teenager, rape as an adult woman, and of course the multiple childhood sexual abuse that occurred in my life. And I would want to put it in sequence so that it will be easy for us to follow. And I also want to try to make sure it's not too long. Some of the stories are scary, and when we hear them, they could elicit fear. But I want us today to not look at it from the sort of, hey, oh, sorry, that happened to you. Oh, that's so terrible. They were such bad people. But I want us to look at it from the point of, I'm going to do my best to make sure a child in my environment does not experience that. Okay? Thank you for joining us in this fight against child sexual abuse. The first experience that I can recollect, I think I may have been like 4, and I could recollect sitting beside another 4-year-old boy, on the staircase. Of course, there was no adults around us, and there was some fumbling. What we call today exploration, and not really abuse, but I could remember it was sexual. And after that, the first encounter I could recollect was, of course, of a family member. This is also to remind us that over 90% of people who molest children are people the children know, and also the family or immediate people that in the immediate environs. A cousin, recollect, we went on holiday, and I could remember very well. And I don't think that happened once. I think because we used to go a lot of family holidays. Every time we had to go to that location, he did play out sexual activities with me. And then finally, I think I was maybe 9 or 10, or between 8 and 10. Another uncle was discovered sexually molesting me. And my parents discovered this. I was not disclosing. All the other ones I've talked about were not disclosed to anyone. They talk about it. Maybe in our days, and I still think that still occurs powerfully today, not giving children the ability to come close to you, to be able to tell you. And you see, we keep having this repeated thing going on, that even for people who are survivors who it has happened to, in all their plans to make sure they're preventing, something happening to their children, sometimes some things still happen and the children still can't come up to you in all your attempts to keep them safe. So it's a very tricky, but also preventable. Because the more you understand it, then the more you're able to be watchful, and not just watchful, but also with intention, being intentional rather, to know that apart from the education you're giving them, the awareness you're creating within your family household, a child may still be predisposed to abuse. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, it can be discouraging, but it's not. What happens here is creating an atmosphere that your children can open up to you and be able to discuss things with you. Yes, you're trying, but you just need to find out how best and how best will it work for my own family. What is the communication style that we have to put in place? What else do I have to do? Because what works for A may not necessarily work for B. So of course I didn't share what happened to me as a child, except the one they discovered. That was all they know. And I didn't like the way it was addressed, even at that age, between 8 and 10. My dad just told my mom, go take care of your daughter. And the uncle was restricted to sleep outside the house in the bedroom. Okay. Then after that, of course, other forms of sexual abuse are also happening. The senior adult men in the neighborhood will fall in. But why does this happen? Because there are questions I asked myself later in life. Why did I have to go through that? Why didn't it stop? Why is it everybody just wants to touch me, as a child? And this is particularly to educate adults, because we are the ones who will be held responsible for what happened to children. So we are the one creating the damaged adults, and we have to be able to know what are the intricacies. How does this happen? When I look back, I think somewhere accidental, but I asked myself, why was it me? Because I'm not a timid child. I was very outgoing and outspoken as a child, creative, playful, wanted to, very inquisitive also. I wanted to do things, maybe also because I was a girl and that was not really the sex both of my parents were waiting for. They both wanted a boy, and I came as a girl. So I had a lot of things to prove that I could do this, I could do that, because I knew they didn't want me as the men. Not they loved me, but they preferred to have a boy as the first child. What are you picking out of this? Because the essence is not to share my story is just one of those stories of many millions of stories that have happened. And what we're talking about is it is still happening. And we want to make sure this doesn't happen. A child does not know how to handle sexual stimulation. They are not prepared yet to have an understanding of what it is to have climax. And when we also want to educate, using the words good touch and bad touch has its disadvantages, because some of the touches have bad intention and they feel good. Because we need to remember children are also sexual beings. They're created male and female. And what distinguishes us as as male or female are sexual organs. That's it. So it's not, so at times it does feel good. And we know as adults that sex is sweet. Yes, you say sex for a child. Yes, most people do not penetrate children at first. There is grooming. There's a way it is introduced to a child. And these are areas where, as parents, we need to be very careful, because sometimes it is not even anybody else molesting our children. We are the ones indirectly doing that. We are the ones who are actually doing that to our children. For example, you want to watch a movie and it is family time, your children are still awake, or it's even beyond family time, but for whatever reason they are awake, and you want to sit down and watch an adult movie with children who are minors. A movie has restriction for 16, and you want a 7, 8-year-old, 6-year-old, 5-year-old, 4-year-old, 3-year-old watching, and you say, oh, they don't know anything, they're not going to pick anything out of it. Not the Generation Z. Sometimes you have porn on your phone, or you have pornography somewhere in the house or channels, and they have access to it because you have not put in a code, a lock code, on your decoder or on your movie satellite or whatever. It could be your phones. And we bring in people into our homes who are the ones who will expose our children. And sometimes it's in school. I've heard a parent talk about her 8-year-old reporting that another child was bringing adult magazine to the class. So these things can happen anywhere and everywhere. The areas where you think are the most safe, interesting enough, are actually the areas where the most vulnerability occurs. I'm going to end the program at this point for today, or for this edition rather. I have to get used to that. But I want to see what it is that you were able to pick out of this. Please do share in the content in the comment section. Let me see if you're able to pick one or two things as a parent. It would be nice to have a conversation around what you were able to get out of this. Because the essence of it is not just to tell my story, but it is that what were you able to pick out of it? And then what are the action points that you are going to take to make sure that your children are safe and the risk is reduced to the barest minimum to the best of your ability. It is preventable, so we can have wholesome adults. Thank you for joining me this week. See you. And do not forget to subscribe and like the video. And you can hit the notification button as well. See you.